Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Sorry we're a bit delayed. I hope everybody's fine. Okay, so um, thank you for being with us. This is a very promising conversation. It's the first time we're doing a live stream, and we have a lot of topics to cover, so this is exciting. And before we start, this event is recorded and live streamed. So if you don't want to appear on the video, please deactivate your camera. Also, you're all muted right now, or at least most of the people in the room are muted. So please, if you're not speaking, stay muted. Also, we have chat options. The chat conversation will go to me directly. Um, and you can also ask. There will be a Q&A at the very end, so you can use that option. This event will run until 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And what else? My name is Diane Collin. I'm your host today. I'm the founder and director of ArtsAbly, which is based in Toronto in Canada, but we really work with people in different parts of the globe. And for those who don't know, ArtsAbly is a company supporting the work of artists and arts professionals with disabilities in all kind of domains. And one of our ongoing projects is a podcast called ArtsAbly in Conversation that can be found on all streaming platforms. Uh, and really, the aim is to let artists or artist professionals tell the audience what they do and to talk about their journey in the arts, whether it's academically, as a performer, as a composer, a dancer, a singer, painter, photographer, whatever, theater artists, cinema. A lot of domains. And today we celebrate our 50th episode of ArtsAbly in Conversation. And we are lucky today to have a panel of 13 guests who all have been individually interviewed in the past. And you can find their episodes on our website. Our guests today represent many of these domains I just talked about, and they're based in Canada, in the United States, and in Turkey. And before presenting them to you, I just wanted to say a word about someone who cannot be here today, but she does a lot for ArtsAbly, and it's our social media manager, Alexa Vasos. We post content during the week every day, almost every day, and she's the one behind these posts, and I wanted to recognize the good job that she's doing. Okay, so let's hear about our guests. So I will start, I will call everybody by their names, and I will start by Alex Bulmer. Can you present yourself, please?
Hi, Diane. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
I hear you fine.
Yes,
Yes.
you can. Good. Hi, my name is Alex Bolmer. I use pronouns she, they. I have a kind of scruffy-ish, shortish, light brown hair. I'm a female presenting human in their late 50s, and I am wearing a kind of a multicolored plaid kind of cozy top. It's oversized, and there are big paintings behind me that my grandfather painted.
Thank you.
Oh, do you want to know what I do? Is that part of our
Yes.
introduction?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Um, I work as an actor, playwright, screenwriter, and director.
Thank you. Emily.
Just had to unmute there. All
Yeah.
right. I'm Emily Schooley. I use generally she, her pronouns. I'm a light skinned adult woman with long red hair and green eyes. I'm currently sitting on my couch in my living room, coming to you from Toronto, which is traditionally Treaty 13 territory and also covered by the Dish with One Spoon Covenant. So I'm a multidimensional artist. I'm primarily actor, filmmaker, voiceover artist. I both direct and produce my own work, producing only of necessity. And as well, I am more recently a psychic oracle as well. So I've started doing readings for people alongside my more traditional artistic work.
Thank you. Wow, very interesting. I didn't know that. Kemal.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kemal Gorey, he, him. I have brown gray hairs and glasses. I am a media composer, identify as blind, and I also serving as an accessibility advocate at RAMP. I currently serving as the secretary, and so glad to be here.
Thank you. And for those who don't know, ROMT is Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities. We have a few people from ROMT today. Malicious Sheep.
Hello, everyone. I am Malicious Sheep. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, photographer, vocalist, poet, voice actor, community organizer, all the hats. They, them pronouns. I am to you from rural Canada, specifically in Anishinaabeg territory, and am super pleased to be here. Multiply disabled, immunocompromised, neurodivergent, chronically ill, and disabled. All the whole combo. But yes, glad to be here.
Thank you. Laura.
Hello, I'm Laura Brody, and I am a middle-aged woman with brown hair, shoulder length, with turquoise headphones, and a slightly blurry background of my living room slash work area. And among many other things, I'm an artist and curator and the founder of Opulent Mobility, which is an exhibit that reimagines disability as opulent and powerful. I'm in Monrovia, California, also known as Tongva Land, and I'm really pleased to see you all.
Thank you. Rory?
I am Rory McLeod. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a light-skinned man with short brown hair and glasses, and you can't tell on Zoom, but I'm also very tall. Um, I am the executive and artistic director of Xenia Concerts, which is an organization that works with the neurodiversity and disability communities to redesign concert experiences and make them more accessible, both for the artists and for audiences.
Thanks. Stefan.
Thanks, Diane. My name is Stefan Sanandan Harnish, and I'm joining you today from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam Nation, where the University of British Columbia, the Point Grey campus, is located. I'm a sessional lecturer in the Theatre Studies department at UBC's Point Grey campus, and I'm a scholar in residence at St. John's College, which is also on UBC's Point Grey campus.
Thank you. Andrew?
Hello, I'm Andrew Dell'Antonio, and I'm joining you from Round Rock, Texas, which is the unceded territory of the Tonkawa. I am a music historian. I teach at the University of Texas at Austin, have an ADHD diagnosis, and have been interested in disability studies and access for quite some time. And I'm helping my daughter here, so I'm going to go off screen briefly, but thank you all for being here. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here with so many incredible people. A lot of you I've been dying to meet, so this was a great opportunity. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Elizabeth McLean. I am Assistant Professor of Musicology and Director of Disability Studies at Virginia Tech. I'm also a member of RAMPed, and I'm the founder of Open the Gates Gaming, which empowers everyone to tell their stories through tabletop role-playing games to try to make that more accessible and inclusive. I'm autistic. I also have mobility disabilities. Right now, it's a lot of rollators, but also canes, crutches, whatever is going to work on that particular day. And I have chronic health disabilities. Most of my work focuses on disability culture and the arts, and trying to move towards a more ethical model of scholarship where we're truly partnering with artists and communities and helping them tell their stories, instead of kind of making their work our own. I cannot remember if did I give a visual description at the beginning?
No,
I get
go
very
ahead.
distracted, so I have notes that I'm working off of. But I'm a white woman in my 30s with longish blonde hair and glasses. Yeah.
Thanks. Robin.
Hi, my name is Robin Hahn. My pronouns are she, they. I am a white femme person with light brown hair and a big old pink headband coming to you from my voice studio on the unceded occupied lands of the Musqueam, also known as Vancouver. I am an opera singer, a stage director, a vocal coach, an actor, and a content creator in the making content on YouTube and about the intersections between opera and disability. And I co-founded Canada's first 100% openly disability-led and run opera company in 2012. Ooh, 2011? Ooh, that's a date I should know. But yeah, that's me. It is so lovely to be here and to speak with all of you wonderful, wonderful humans.
Thanks. Deshaymond.
Hello, everybody. I am Deshaymond. I answer to pronouns he, him, his. I am a very handsome Black gentleman with tight curly hair and light brown skin, and I am an R&B music artist, a singer, songwriter, composer, producer, and CEO and founder of The Shaman Media. It's a platform not only where I run my music business, but I also provide visibility to people with disabilities and all of the intersections. So I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. Heather?
Hi, my name is Heather White-Luco. My stage name is Heather Feather. I have a PhD in music theory, and I'm on my second career, which is working as a children's musician. I am a middle-aged white woman with brown hair, shoulder length, pale skin, green eyes, and I'm currently sitting in a room here on the island of Montreal where I keep a lot of books. And somebody mentioned a painting by a grandparent, and I actually have paintings by my grandma up behind me. Oh, and I have multiple sclerosis. This is my disability, and I'm a speaker for RAMPed as well.
Yes, great community. Well, thank you all for being here. Malicious Sheep, did you want to provide a visual description of your visual right now?
Yeah, sure. I also get distracted, so I miss that part.
No worries.
I am mostly known, well, fully known, as an artist with my disembodied voice, as well as my profile picture, which is a photograph of a bristly floral protrusion from a red-rooted pigweed, which is a wildflower, and nestled in there is a Phoebus audax juvenile who is perched just tucked in the florets of that plant. And the photograph is by yours truly.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for this introduction, and thank you for everybody joining us. Also, a few people joined us from our audience members, so welcome. I will start immediately with the first question, which is for some of our music performers here, Deshaman and Heather. Can you share an experience of performing in a venue that were inaccessible to you? And also, how did you cope with this situation? And were you able to speak with the venue, give feedback after the performance? And I will start by the shaman.
Thanks, Diane. I also forgot to mention that I am an ambassador on deck for RAMPed, Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities, and I'm an advocate, a disability rights advocate. My first festival that I did, you know how there's like multiple stages and they're all, made for the event. Well, there were no ramps. There were no it was like this huge step up And I literally had to have two people from my team kind of hoist me up in order for me to get up on the stage and then head to the front. So I definitely did have a conversation with the people that were managing the stage afterwards. And, I asked them like if they knew that I was a disabled artist when they booked me and, you know, if they even thought about accommodations, and just gave them a little bit of advice on for future how to accommodate blind people. Oh, and I identify as blind. I don't think I said that either.
Okay. And so what were their feedback? What were their response? What did they contact you back and say we need advice, or did they just say, okay, we will do better next time, or what?
No, well, in that moment, they told me that they'll do better next time. And they said that, normally they have this and that and this and that. But, what I will say is that they tried to work around not having accommodations. They really were definitely nice people, and they treated me human and made sure that I had everything that I needed outside of the accommodations that I needed.
How was the concert?
Oh, I killed.
I'm
I
sure.
definitely killed.
Okay, thanks. Heather, what about you?
I've had a number of experience with stairs in dark rooms and flashing lights, and none of which I can handle. So stairs are tricky. Sometimes, well, generally my balance is poorer than the average person, and often I find myself when I'm tired, it gets even worse. So part of what helps us balance when we have balance issues, because we have like 13 centers in our brain, and some of mine don't work anymore, is our vision. And when it's dark, I also can't see. I'm wearing shoes, my feet can't feel, so I don't have that, I'm losing that sensation as well in my feet with neuropathy, peripheral neuropathy. So, yeah, it's the access to stages. So I find that a lot of them have kind of these rickety stairs. Often it's dark, especially like award ceremonies, which tend to be in dark rooms. And then you have black stairs with a makeshift railing that isn't the most stable. And then the stair is a big step up. So it's always like, will I use a cane? Won't I use a cane? Is this going to hold me if I fall? So this is the question. Um, I've only once had an experience with lights. I have like pupil issues where one kind of dilates and the other one is doing the opposite. It's called a Marcus Gunn pupil, related to MS as well. And so I find flashing lights, strobe lights, it's all just completely discombobulating. So whenever I've mentioned bright lights or that, always taken care of. Never a problem. Really good experience. And in general, whenever I ask about stairs, I've only had one experience where they were really unable to accommodate, and it was very much last minute. It would have preferred not to have to use a very long set of outdoor stairs with no rail. That was nerve-wracking. And I was also by myself. I didn't know anybody. I didn't feel comfortable asking somebody for help to get up those stairs. So I was just super cautious. I did actually talk with somebody recently about it, where I did a performance and accessed a few different parts of their venues. And it was a really productive conversation. And it was, yes, we realized. And at the last minute, it was very difficult to try to do. But next time, we're definitely going to do better. And we recognize that this is an issue. And we're putting a team together to address this in our organization in the future. So it was a very positive response, and I couldn't ask for better.
Wow. Well, that's great because it's sometimes we don't even know who to speak to, or we don't they will say, okay, I will report that to my direction, and then you never hear from someone, from anybody.
Well, this was a group in a festival that actually gave participants a chance to debrief with the head of the organization, and everybody had that opportunity. And it was just a quick, like, if you wanted to talk about your experience. And it wasn't specifically about accessibility. It was actually about, the festival itself. But I brought up the accessibility, and yeah, it was super productive and a very positive response. Honestly, as somebody who identifies as having accessibility needs, I honestly couldn't ask for better. It was great.
Awesome. That's awesome, Heather. And even when that railing is rickety, I mean, at that first festival that I did, it was literally just a crate and then a huge step up to the stage. So it was crazy, but they really they got me up there. But I found that my problems are with accessibility, getting to the stage, they're lesser now because I'm advocating beforehand. I always call the venue and let them know what I need. And they're usually pretty good about it.
I did have the opportunity as well to signal beforehand. There was just one thing that once somebody couldn't fix recently because they just said, well, we don't, like, the elevator's broken.
Right.
We can't do that.
We can't do
But
anything about that.
like there's some things we could do, but yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, thank you. I have a related question to that, but for the direction side or the curators or the artistic directors. So I have a question for Laura, Rory, and Tracy. When it comes to like organizing events, whatever the event is, what do you have to consider? What challenges did you face in some venues that might not be entirely fit for your organization or your event? And also, do you work with venues to improve their accessibility, or do you tend to go back to those you know are accessible? And I will start with Laura.
Hi, and thank you. I didn't mention it before, but a lot of my chronic issues are the more invisible kind. They're like chronic PTSD and Hashimoto's and other such things. But because my artists all have access needs, and because I am actively working with people that I want to be able to come in, who, for example, might use wheelchairs or walkers, I need to find places that are accessible in a variety of ways. And I find that inevitably I'm doing a certain amount of educational work with every venue that I work with. That is just part of the process. That's okay. Sometimes that's turned out really poorly. I have really actually run into situations where people didn't understand that, for example, having a bathroom in a separate building far away from the site might be an issue. That really basic things. There are a lot of supposedly set into law from the Americans with Disabilities Act about staircases and access that they have many properties that are so-called grandfathered in, that they are not actually accessible. And finding ways to work around that can be a real challenge. Some people are very open to it, and you can always find ways to make it more accessible, including videotaping or photographing the work and showing it on the side of the building. There are a lot of ways we can get around that. But some people are open to it, and some people get really cranky.
Yeah, I had I imagine that when you invite people to exhibit their piece of art, you also need to attach them on on the walls and things like that. And I always, when I go to these exhibitions and I see that everything is high or the lights are not correctly set, and you have them in, if you're lower, you have them in the face, things like that. So do you have that kind of conversations with the venue?
All the time. Sometimes I'm the one hanging, so that's less of an issue. But otherwise, it is a real conversation to have each time of trying to set things a little bit lower so that a wheelchair user isn't necessarily going to have to strain their neck looking up at it. That everyone has to do a certain amount of adjusting, which is actually really, I think, beneficial, and it really starts a great conversation. I will usually advocate for American Sign Language on associated talks and other things. I will, wherever possible, have Braille signage and detailed art descriptions for all the pieces. Sometimes it's a real challenge juggling all of that, and sometimes funding is a real problem. That's just often a problem. But there are ways. So it depends on the venue, it depends on what budget is available, but trying to find ways to make things more accessible to as many people as possible is always an educational experience, both for me and the venue, and usually for the audience members, since I work with both disabled and non-disabled community members.
Rory, what about you? I know you are doing a lot of, you're dealing with a lot of venues because you change, you do some collaboration with venues with some organizations that have their own. So how do you deal with all that?
Yeah, thanks. I was reflecting on this and thinking about the fact that the accessibility of a venue doesn't just come down to the physical accessibility of the space, it also comes down to the people running the venue. And so we heard some really good stories from Heather and Deshaymond about good positive experiences they've had when they gave feedback. And we found that to be the same thing, that sometimes what seems to be a barrier can actually be overcome if you have the right team and they're offering the right kinds of support. But we do, just to put things in context, we present adaptive concerts at Xenia concerts. And so we have partnerships with presenting organizations. One of our big partnerships is with TO Live here in Toronto, but then we also work with other theaters. And then we also have partnerships with other music festivals. So we're, in those cases, using whatever venue they have available to them. And then we also go and do on-site concerts at places like specialized schools, care facilities, children's hospitals, that kind of thing. So one of the good things about working with disability support and service organizations is that they usually have those supports in place already, and we can just go in and bring them a great musical experience. When it comes to venues, it depends a lot on when the building was built, what the standards were when it was built, and whether it's been renovated, and whether the organization has had the budget to renovate for physical access. But just to give an example of unexpected opportunities for problem solving, one of the theaters that we've worked with has, pretty typical standard seating that's fixed to the floor. Any wheelchair or mobility device users in this call will know that those places often have maybe 3 seats that are for accessible seating. They're often at the back of the hall or off in the corner. They often don't have a seat next to them where a companion can sit. So that was a pretty major accessibility concern for us with our audiences. But we discovered from talking to the venue that the stage was accessible. So we were able to set it up so that we had some seating with, just fold-out chairs on stage and some space for people who are wheelchair users or mobility device users on stage. And we just reoriented the performers a little bit and made it possible for some of the attendees to be on stage with the performers and some in the theater in the audience. So it's just one example of when you think you might have a venue that's not going to work based on what you see when you walk in, but because of the collaboration with the team, it actually ends up working out pretty well. But then we've also had kind of the opposite experience where we've walked into a space and thought, oh, this is perfect. The floor is completely flat. There's natural lighting. We don't have to worry about stairs or physical access. And then it turns out that they don't use that room often enough to have all the technical capabilities to offer closed captioning and screens and all of the other access supports that we like to offer our audiences. So it's always a constant learning process, but we found that usually the venues that we work with, they're choosing to partner with Xenia Concerts for a reason. And that's because they want to do their best to make an event as accessible as possible. So generally, we've had positive experiences. And if we walk into a space that's clearly unusable, we just won't do our concert there.
Yeah, for sure. And also, it's a learning curve for everybody.
Right. Yeah. For us, for the production team, for our artists, for our audiences too, sometimes.
Well, I have this question for people who are acting, whether it's theater performance or opera. When you are working on a theater, and this is a question for Alex, Emily, and Robin. When you're working in this theater company settings or film production settings, then how do you ensure your access needs are met? And how do you work with also the rest of the team? We were talking about the learning curve for everybody. So do you have examples of productions that worked for you, that are accessible, that you worked with the team to make it as accessible as possible? And I would like to ask Alex first.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it might be helpful to share just some of the strategies that I always have ready to go, whether it's theater or film, and I sort of go through this kind of checklist, and it's like transparency about my access needs and making it really clear that the word needs, I use that for a reason. It's not wants and hopes, it's needs. Um, real transparency about what I need in order to do my work. Included in that is I always ask, if it's theater, I always ask to have access to the costume designers and the set designer just to make sure that I understand, what they're thinking and make sure that it's in line with my access needs. I place really clear boundaries on the fact that am employed as an artist, and if I if I'm being pushed to start to serve as like an access consultant or trainer or educator for the team, then I make it really clear that I expect to be paid for that work, or to be prepared for that I may not have the capacity, and they'll have to address those issues with someone else. But I try and keep that boundary very clear. I put it all in a rider so that it's part of my contract, everything I need, so it's all signed off. I always set up a review process throughout a process throughout a rehearsal and performance process, so that because you can't always predict what you're going to need because you don't exactly know what's going to come along. So we have a review. Um, and I like to give feedback right immediately, whether it's positive or where improvement is needed, because I think that's how we all learn. So that's the process. And I actually just got off an amazing experience with a film production shooting Being Human, the Judy Human story. It's a feature film that is being shot in Toronto. It was just the best. They had an access coordinator, they had an access team, they had access uh, documents that everybody got with their sides and their call. They had a language document, so accessible language, as well as a sustainability document. And if somebody had to leave my side, there was always somebody else right there, and they used my name. They understood how to describe what was going on around me. It was an excellent experience. That's what you get when you get a really good access coordinator. It's embedded in the project. It's not just an add-on.
Wow, this is fantastic. We are all waiting for this movie to come.
It's going to be good.
Yeah. Emily, what about you?
Sure. So I'm going to start by prefacing this by saying that for a long time I was not aware that I was allowed to have needs. I think that might be relatable, especially to women or especially to other people that are especially underserved. But it's for me, I just realized too, I don't think I shared this when I introduced myself, but I am primarily invisibly disabled. So I present as an abled person. Among some of the other things I deal with are chronic pain, food issues, complex PTSD, as well as neurodivergence. So, for me, I deal with a lot of anxiety just kind of based on a number of things. But yeah, I think the only project I've ever worked on where I was specifically asked for access needs was when I did my guest spot on the Squeaky Wheel, which I think, as anybody may know, it is a disability led production. So of course they had an access coordinator, but something else, and this is kind of tangentially related to access that I want to mention. Two things actually is that even with the Squeaky Wheel, just and many other productions I've been on for myself, just because I am a mid-size actor, like I'm probably about a size 12, give or take. I've had to start bringing my own wardrobe to a number of sets because even if there's no wardrobe fitting beforehand, like I've had more than once where I was told, oh, there'll be wardrobe for you on set if they didn't even just take my measurements just as someone living in a mid-sized body. I've often found that there's still kind of a very implicit fat phobia that pervades in the industry where wardrobe would still not fit me, and just it becomes really honestly embarrassing for the production that they were not better prepared to accommodate a professional. But yeah, kind of beyond that, it's like with my own journey with even just learning more about my invisible disabilities, I was also very late diagnosed as neurodivergent. So for a long time, I just thought I was just a little bit quieter than normal theater kid. But something else that I think we're still working on in terms of just getting better access in terms of the industry is even like the audition process now. So for myself, I live in a very tiny Toronto apartment where every time I need to self tape as an actor, and this is even just to audition to get parts, I'm now spending at least half an hour kind of setting up a backdrop, setting up lighting, setting up camera, setting up audio. And for me, with my neurodivergence, like it adds a lot of extra emotional labor on that. Where even the audition process itself, like step one in getting work as an actor, is not very well accommodated for those of us who are neurodivergent or have other needs. Something else I want to mention too, and this is just has been my own experience with the industry, is that the way that specific film unions respond to reports of predators. So people that, men that sexually harass women, things like that, there's still very, very poor support there where if you're not a union, if you're not covered by a specific union like DGC or ACTRA or whatnot, and if you're assaulted by someone in the industry who may be a member of there, but if it did not occur on a union-led set, just in terms of like, gender justice, justice for survivors, the union is still also very, like, the film industry is also very poor at actually giving a damn in those cases, where even if it's reported, they're hesitant to do very little unless that there's a liability on them. So this is a little bit outside of the realm of kind of traditional accommodations, but one of the reasons I personally don't audition for more projects now are I see men out there who have sexually preyed on women and they're being supported with success. They're still getting certain projects where those of us who are survivors are not accommodated in the same way. And that can also lead to, more trauma, more invisible disability. So that's something where, I've made reports about certain people and I have not, like, those reports have not been acted on. So that's something where I would like to see increased support for survivors down the road. But kind of outside of that, like circling back to like being on set or being in the rehearsal hall for theater, one of the other kind of important accommodations that I've needed are, certain food accommodations where if I have sensitivities, if I have allergies, I have to make, certain requests. It's like, oh, I need low carb, I need this, so that my body doesn't fall apart while I'm in the process of making this work. And I find that professionally run sets are a little bit better at that, but as you're kind of an actor within that indie space, sometimes you're not accommodated in the ways that you need to be. So there's still kind of a balance to, or like finding a way to be able to ask, like for me to ask for what I need, even to like help mitigate some anxiety that I feel. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not, but I think it's still very much a work in progress there.
Yeah. And I guess, like Robin, I will ask you to the same question, but I guess it will be the same whether you're on stage for theater production, opera, or film, you will find these kind of similar issues. So, Robin, can you also give us your side of it?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, to start, as you might imagine, opera is not exactly a super forward thinking art form in the grand scheme of things. It's a little bit, it's a wee bit traditional. It slightly has to be dragged kicking and screaming into the new millennium still. So there's a lot of work to be done. And like, I'm in a very privileged place in opera because I live in and work around a space where this work has been being done for the last like decade. So for example, I'm able to go into an audition for an opera using my like concert canes. For reference, I am holding up a sparkly ombre pink to diamante cane. So they're not, subtle in any capacity. And I auditioned with them, where a lot of opera singers might hide their disabilities if they could, which is really, really common in the operatic space. And I go into those auditions and I will talk about my needs right away. And if they are not willing to play ball, then that's their loss and not mine. And again, I am very lucky to be able to create an artistic career that is multifaceted, and I have the opportunity to do things like direct operas where I can create accessible spaces and set that precedent that not only is more inclusive of other disabled artists around me, but also like I directly benefit from that precedent if I am directing an opera and creating a space within the operatic world where that's expected. The next audition I walk into may be more affected by the space that I've created. For example, I've created masking policies in operatic spaces, which again, you might imagine the operatic world would be pretty reticent to do any masking, given that we expectorate loudly upon each other for money. And many people experience that it can be limiting for singing, which is true, but it turns out that masking policies are still, of course, beneficial in any space that they can be used and make that space more accessible for immunocompromised folks. And, if you just set the precedent of coming into a show with, as a director, for example, with, hey, here's the masking policy I used in the last show, then this new company can go, oh, that was actually not that hard, and is more likely to use it as well. So it happens bit by bit over time in the operatic world, particularly when shown that access can be easy, that it's not that hard. You can do little tiny things, cheap, even free, and they make their spaces so much more accessible. I've also, like, within the sort of film acting space, I've been partnering with my agency. I work with Kello Inclusive, which is a disabled talent agency across Canada. And we've created with the agency examples of access riders that are video format that are easier often for film actors to create, because video access riders are more commonly used in the UK, certainly, than they are in North America right now. And if we can set a little bit of a precedent that this is something that in the film industry people might expect, we'd love to see that. So yeah, that's been a really wonderful partnership to create. And of course, to have, because now when I book a role, it's real easy. And it frames it too, again, as easy. Because it turns out making spaces just that much more accessible is not hard.
It's just a matter of finding things to do before that and working together so that it's done. And sometimes, as you say, it can be free, it can be, masks. There are masks for singers. Why not try, right? So there are things to do. Yeah, thank you. I have a question for the people who work in university, so professors or lecturers, and this would be for Stefan, Andrew, and Elizabeth. How is accessibility seen from this academic point of view? And when you think of that academic point of view, what needs to be considered? For example, when a conference is organized, or either as an organizer or as a speaker, And also as a classroom, right? When you're a classroom where you're teaching, what are these good practices of accessibility in academia? And I want to start with Stefan.
Thanks very much, Diane. From my perspective, um, I think some of the insights that Jay Dolmage offers in his 2017 book, Academic Ableism, Disability in Higher Education, some of those insights remain deeply relevant. In particular, what he has to say about neoliberalism, and the ways in which neoliberalism um, turns everything, including access, into a commodity. And uh, related to that, there are two uh, further problems. The first, both of which are connected to the commodification of access, if I can put it like that. So the first has to do with the resulting appeals to budgetary constraints, and uh, appeals to limited resources. In some cases, those justifications for the lack of access might be, in some sense, true or uh, plausible, but that such justifications that access is missing or inadequate because of budgetary constraints, that doesn't deal with the fundamental question of why those budgetary limits exist as a way of signaling the relative unimportance of disability access. Uh, I think to some extent, this is grounded in my perspective, in my um, individual perspective, but I think it ultimately goes beyond that. When we're asking the question about what access is like within a university setting, I think that it's also important to think about um, uh, the cost of living crisis more generally, both students, staff, and faculty within the university, which of course tracks the cost of living outside the university. I don't think that the two worlds are separate. And more specifically, in terms of accessibility, what are the constraints that contingent faculty, for example, or graduate students, or anybody employed in precarious work, low wage work, or having to work multiple jobs, how do our experiences navigating access and trying to secure access with limited resources, limited time, limited energy, um, ultimately highlight the extreme economic inequality in which struggles over access take place. And that's the end of my thought.
Yeah, it's very interesting because when you're it's such a complex environment sometimes, academia. And so if you think of all these and also it depends. So you're a lecturer, and then Elizabeth and Andrew have other positions. I think we all uh, have so many things to integrate, so to make sure that these students and ourselves are safe and work in a good environment. So I want to ask the same question to Andrew.
Yeah, so I really appreciate Stefan's perspective because I don't think I fully described myself earlier. So I am a middle-aged white man wearing glasses, gray hair. Today I'm wearing a white polo shirt. So my position is much more stable. I am a full professor at a university, School of Music at a U.S. university. What I would say about access now from a teaching and student perspective is that I'm sure in Canada the situation is somewhat different because laws are somewhat different. But the United States, with the American Disabilities Act, there is nominally the idea that reasonable accommodations should be offered to anybody in a particular situation. And for those who are employed, you all know that it is the employer who defines reasonable. And in an academic environment, it is ultimately the instructor who has that opportunity to do so and can say, well, in order to succeed in my class, you need to be able to do X, Y, and Z. If your body mind is not capable of doing that, then tough, right? You don't belong in my class. Most people aren't quite that brutal about it, but in the end, music programs, performance programs in general, by and large, are dependent on hyperability. In fact, on individuals damaging themselves in the course of working so hard that they burn out and harm themselves. I hope none of the musicians on this panel have experienced this personally, but I know many musicians who have, regardless of their identity. And so the question of access to musical training is one that is really difficult for many of us to manage. So I'm a historian. I teach classes that are about music and culture. I've been interested in universal design for learning for a while and similar kinds of access matters. And I'm committed to being radical in the access I provide to students. And I don't want to go into it, but that's something that I think about a lot. And I'm able, I think, to bring along many of my fellow academic colleagues in that way of thinking. But for the performance colleagues, the idea that somebody who's studying an instrument could be understood as studying it properly if the technique is non-standard, if their body needs a particular version of an instrument that's modified, if they're blind and therefore they need a different way of accessing certain kinds of training. We have very few disabled students, and the argument is always, well, we don't need to spend all that money. So back to Stefan's point, we don't need to spend all the money for access because we don't have any students. Well, guess why you don't have all the students? Because the word gets around that it is not accessible to study in that place. So connecting then this idea that I think Stefan puts very well about the precarity of many people in the system, even for those of us who are privileged, blessed, whatever adjective you want to use, to have to be able to do good work, and we hope work for greater access. The premises of access in academia, where you need to be excellent according to certain criteria that are non-negotiable and also arbitrary, created by white non-disabled men, right? I mean, as people legitimately discuss. So this is something that I find really very important as well, is how we think of access for younger people into the discipline. And I'm really delighted that RAMP now is there as something to point to say, okay, we're going to do it. I'm going to do my best to help you get through this program, which doesn't give you access. And there are mentors who have managed to make it despite the fact that the training and opportunities were limited. And now there are people who can model what it means to be a successful disabled musician. So I guess I'll leave it out there.
Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. I look up to both Stefan and Andrew a great deal. So it's absolutely wonderful to be able to follow both of you answering this question, because you've laid the groundwork really beautifully. I say groundwork, but that's really very deep analysis with also like practical tips. And kind of going back to what I want to also echo what Stefan said, like Andrew did. I mean, at the end of the day, budgets are expressions of priorities. If you don't have enough money for access and you're refusing to get creative about how you pursue access, you do not value us as human beings. That's it. And I know you can be nice and you can smile and you can wish me happy birthday and you can remember my cat's name and all these lovely things. But that doesn't take away from the fact that if you are refusing to provide basic access, if you're refusing to prioritize that, you are dehumanizing me and my community. For better or worse, I tend to take the dehumanizing my community one a bit harder than me personally, but hey, musicians, we're trained to have thick skins, aren't we? For better or worse. Budgets, when I say they're expressions of priority, this concept of priority and values is something that I think is going to apply within academia and without. But when you're talking about access, academia, classical music, a lot of these spaces I've inhabited are terribly conservative institutions in the sense of they've been around for a long time. They do not like change. They like tradition. The idea that universities and academia are these ultra progressive spaces is very bizarre propaganda that came out of the Vietnam protests in the United States. I just want to be clear about this. They are very conservative, old institutions who like doing things the way that they have done. So when we ask for access, we're asking them to change. We're asking them to abandon a lot of the eugenics-based principles that Jay Dolmage points out in academic ableism undergird the ridiculous number of steps that it takes to physically get into the university. They also undergird a lot of the conversations around which bodies should and shouldn't be acting, which voices should and shouldn't be heard on stage, which techniques should and should not be allowed on an instrument or whatever your discipline is. So fundamentally, when you're hitting up against an access issue, you need to stop and evaluate. What are my actual values? What are my actual priorities in this experience? Where can I be creative? How can I work with other people to highlight those? My team, we named our group Open the Gates Gaming because we felt like all of us had been able to sneak into these highly gate-kept areas of academia, tabletop role-playing games. And now that we're in there, we want to kick open the gates from from the inside. We're kicking them out in this case to try to let more people in. And I'm so deeply honored to be part of this project that you've been building, Diane, to get so many of these folks who have very, very similar values to it. And I think at the end of the day, for us, for those of us who are in this access work and those of us who are impacted by the lack of accessibility, the way that they hold us back is by making us afraid and making us feel alone and making us feel like we don't belong. They do that by not paying us enough to survive. They do that by working us until we're about ready to collapse from exhaustion, just trying to advocate for our own support needs. If I hear one more time that students need to be self-advocates for their legally given rights, I'm going to lose it on someone, but that's okay. It won't be the first time. But they do this also through hiring practices. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but some of the people that I most deeply admire in my field, in musicology, people that are working on music and disability and incredibly innovative stuff, who are getting book contracts and doing amazing work, cannot secure full-time employment in academia because it is ableist, because the hiring practices are ableist. And to pull back to something that Emily said, I'm so grateful for you for sharing this idea that sexual assault, sexual harassment, that this is an access issue, right? Because this is also intersecting with gender, it's intersecting with sexual orientation, with race, but all of these together are the access issues that we're having to dominate. And as long as they keep us afraid, as long as we're too scared to challenge hiring processes or promotion and tenure or audition guidelines, they make us feel like we don't belong. Those are the things we actually have to go after. And we also have to lift each other up in a system that isn't just capitalism. They're not paying us what we're worth. So let's remind each other every day what we're worth. We can build things. We have more power than we think we have. So for whatever I can add to this conversation, I think whether it's academia, whether it's music broadly, the arts more broadly, we're a lot stronger together. And every time we choose not to be afraid and we choose to love ourselves and love each other and honor the ways we can show up and give each other grace for the ways we can't. This idea of access, it's really not so scary. As Robin was saying, a lot of times it's actually free. A lot of times it's a mindset and it's a willingness and it's doing what the ancestors and elders in disability justice have taught us and moving together. So, yeah.
Wow, yes. Yes to everything. I mean, we are here as a great community, right? We are here like all working together and trying to build a better work together. So I'm thankful for all of you, really, like all of you who are here today. Thank you. I have a question for we all, since the pandemic, we all use a lot of digital tools also, and we all use tools that now digitally has opened some possibilities. And I have a question for those who tend to work with these tools on computer, like the digital platforms and also the production side. And this would be a question for Malicious Sheep and for Kamal. So both of you mainly use digital tools, like for the production side of your work, and also the final products that you produce. At the final product, you will have some content that needs to be accessible and that needs to be shared in these either digital exhibition or movies or whatever you're doing. And I wanted to know how your access needs are met when you're working in these digital tools. And I want to start with Malicious Sheep.
Yeah, sure. A lot of what I have been working with, as a lot of my health issues have progressed, I've switched to photography. And my photographs are not digitally altered at all. They're not staged or artificially lit or go under any sort of post-production. So within that realm, within my art practice, it's not much affected. But the ways in which that I can access community and to share my work is deeply technical, where I am an immunodeficient person. I have been in permanent lockdown for 5 years, and that will go on for the rest of my life. And the way in which I am able to engage with community, and for the first time ever with an art community, is through an ecosystem, blockchain ecosystem called Tezos, particularly through Taya. I am a co-founder of this, one of 20 global community volunteers who, through open sourced software, have created a digital art marketplace. And so a lot of what we do there is create avenues for different types of files to be crafted into something that is transactable, and to provide space for like creative coding. So many various mediums are available within Taya. And a lot of what we do there, because everybody who works at Taya, 20 core members, we're all volunteer artists as well globally. So we do a lot of troubleshooting and education and assist with all of the tech needs of everyone. One of the things that I'm super proud of as a disability justice advocate, can't help myself. When I got there, I was like, listen, the site is not accessible. We need to work on this. I know it's open source. I know we're all community volunteers here. We're doing this part-time, but let's focus on this as a priority. And thankfully, the team was happy to do so. They were unaware that it was inaccessible. And once I explained it to them, they're like, oh, well, we need to solve this like tomorrow. Let's work on this. So it's been great to within that and within metaverse spaces in the ecosystem, all of the devs are really happy to put that work in. I myself am trying to train as one so that I can do a lot of this work too, because it is, we're building everything from scratch within this community, which is really fun. One of the features that we implemented a couple of years ago, and we're working currently on screen reader capability, is a work in progress because our code is a hot mess in the back end. It's getting tidier with time, but we have two elements. Any new user who goes to Taya, which is taya.art, if they have not signed in with their wallet yet, then they see the site in an accessible way, which blurs any not safe for work material as well as any photosensitive material. And once users are able to sign in, then they are able to select that within their settings to disengage that if they choose to view it. So not safe for work is specifically for nudity or violence for folks who have PTSD or complex PTSD, and for photosensitive folks, any moving, undulating, flashing GIFs or videos, anything like that, for folks who have vertigo or migraine or epilepsy, so that the experience of the art community members is a safe one. And we want to make sure that everybody is, even if they're just accessing it for the first time, we're not putting them in a position of potential crisis. So doing that work is really important. I know to the team members there, which has been great. And as community organizer there, I love that. I also do a lot of curation and hosting within that ecosystem, ecosystem of over 10,000 artists globally. And so a lot of when I am hosting and designing events and things, I'm making sure to provide materials in as accessible a way as possible. Hosting events, I serve as reader for those who are non-speaking or phased speaking, or require a reader for any other reason. We do active translation, either live or through our documentation, as best as we can with volunteer power. So, and TEA being a nonprofit DAO LLC, which is volunteer powered and community owned. I think it's core to our values. So. But having access to that community has been beautiful for me. I've grown substantially as a person, and now taking on a leadership role within that community has been very beautiful. So, yeah.
Thanks. It's a lot. It's great. Kemal, what about you? Can you also tell us a little bit of what you do too?
Yes, thanks, Diane. Actually, when it's come to work in business to business area, so you are the one who is supposed to be finding the solutions rather than asking for solutions. And when it comes to access needs, from a media composition perspective, there are its own advantages and disadvantages. First, you have your own studio, so you can calibrate it, fine tune it as the way you want. But when it comes to working for a production team, a production company, working with a director, it's a different story, because at the same time you're working for a client and your job is creating solutions for that client. So, and at the same time you may need your accessibility needs, but when it comes to that, you can always ask questions or give some guidelines or directions. But it really depends on the project. It really depends on the team, the company you're working with. But it may comes down to this: you have to you already declared, so acknowledge that you're a professional. So if you're a professional, you're supposed to be the one. You have to find your own solutions. And since we all here in this room, we are all frontiers. There's no rule book. There's no handbook to make everything accessible, to redesign the word from scratch and make it good for all of us, because nobody spent any time to think that before. But now we, as the members of the disability community, we are greatly forcing the world to rethink, reconsider their decisions and their mental processes, their mindsets. So that makes us, that particular mindset, that particular movement makes us one of the frontiers in this matter. So, which means there's no pre-considered, pre-tried, examined, correct way to go. And when it comes to when we're talking about the media industry, this situation is a lot more tricky, because the media industry can be really conservative in MA. It should be that way because, the media should be the industry, should be the inventive one because, the media includes video games all the way to the streaming platforms and commercial TV networks, social platforms like YouTube and such. But from a business perspective, that can be really conservative. Conservative. So you have to find your way, and you have to open doors for yourself and for the other fellow disabled professionals in different working in different areas. It can be video editing, through the media composition, through the cinematography, and other stuff. But being an inventor is, since all of our natural quality, it can be done easily. Not maybe not easily, but it can be done anyway. And yes, it requires a lot of work, but since it's a natural quality for all of us, it's not that hard for us actually. Not actually as hard as a regular another person who doesn't carry that quality naturally. But I can share a story about that. Most recently, not most recently, but a couple of months ago, I hired by a Finland-based director for scoring an art house short movie about disability culture and how medical practitioners and medical professionals treats the disabled individuals, disabled persons. The thing is, the movie was originally created as a silent movie, then they created an audio description. And the director required a score for the audio description. And I was like, okay, then I will score a music for the audio description. And that was right. But the director informed me that she also wanted to combine everything after I finish score the movie. And I requested to see the picture so I can make a better job, sync the picture with score. But she asked me to do this without seeing the picture because first she wanted to prioritize um, audiences without sight, blind and visually impaired, and second, she wants to experiment a concept whether if a blind composer can score a music for a motion picture project without seeing the picture, obviously, and whether or not that score still can serve to the picture. And turns out it did. Without any time code, without anything, just with the audio description, the music served to the picture really well. So, and now we understand that thanks to this project, now we understand that if the production companies can uh, can put the audio description into the core production budget, a blind composer can perfectly score a music for that particular motion picture project with the audio description and maybe with some important time code information. And with that, a blind composer can score something, will perfectly work perfectly with the picture, and it opens a millions of possibilities for the media industry, for the audiences, for the creators, and for the composers who are blind or visually impaired. So, in this regard, I can easily argue that we're just finding our ways with innovating, inventing, experimenting, trying stuff, and writing the handbook of accessibility, working in the digital era and digital world, and working for the media industry.
Very good points. Yeah, I love it's a good point that um, with the proper adaptation, well, you can do anything, right? It's just a matter of figuring how and with what tools and what medium.
It's just accommodation matter because when we look at that, okay, we need some stuff because of our conditions. It's not that accurate. It's not quite accurate. We need accommodations, just like every living thing needs in this really big universe and on the face of the earth, obviously. And the accommodations must be fulfilled. And the only issue is here, I think, the only important issue is here. Sometimes, maybe most of the times, we just don't know that accommodations because we haven't had the chance to work on that before. Now, since we have, if we have, we can set that accommodations correctly and accurately. And the problem, the issue about the mindset, that's the issue about the mindset. Everybody experiences it all the time. It's not limited with the disability culture, but it's really harsh on the disability culture. So we need to work on that as well. Even though it's not our fault or it's not, but we are the architects. So if we want to build the future, yes, we also have to work on the mindset, the others' mindset. That's the thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a great answer. I really like that. I'm conscious of the time, and we are almost at the end of our conversation. I want to know if to open the floor to our guests today and people in attendance. Does anyone have a question for one of our guests? We have only a few minutes, unfortunately.
Oh, Dan, I have one, not one question, but at the very beginning of the streaming, Elizabeth just told that she is running a tabletop RPG, and I'm just begging her to give me more information about that.
Yeah, so we have a website. It's openthegatesgaming.org. And it started with our local disability community during the real height of the pandemic, wanting to play Dungeons and Dragons with other people because that was getting really popular, but it's not super accessible. So we were developing tools so that they could play with everyone else. So we don't change the rules. They can just take our tools and play at any table anywhere. But then it's also expanding into making sure that the stories we're telling and the adventures that we're telling that are happening and unfolding are allowing people to explore any part of their identity. So things set in Mesoamerica, we've got like a Mesoamerican campaign setting in development that is like if colonialists didn't win, right? But it's also a little magical, so it's a little Wakanda feeling. And there's a project where we're taking operas and you get to play Dungeons and Dragons inside of an opera and push back against and really experience the consequences of sexism and ableism and settler colonialism and racism like in these operas. So we have Tosca, Alcina, um, oh my goodness. Poor Chris Campoboa is going to be on my case. We're actually next month going to be streaming The Invisible Island of Kitej with some with some celebrities. So I'll make sure Diane gets that information. But
I think what we will do is to publish all the resources that we discussed, like a regular episode, right? A lot of things were shared that are really important. So I will publish a resource page with everything so that we know. Okay. Carly, I see your hand is up.
This is sort of a general one for the whole group. It's sort of how do you overcome some when you're on, like, say, for instance, social assistance and that, having to deal with some systems that can be from stone tablet style to quill and parchment in modern versions. to encourage them to sort of upgrade to more modern. I mean,
But
Emily, do you want point? Yeah.
yeah, I'll jump in here. Something that I think is important for us to keep in mind is that a lot of these systems are working exactly as they were designed to, which means that they are intentionally creating more barriers for us to get the access and the support that we need. And that's, there are people within the system that want to help change it. So this is kind of one of the things I call using my Karen powers for good, where you bring that energy to finding legal ways to complain or circumvent things that are giving you barriers to access. So, if it's, is there something that's like human rights adjacent where you can complain if you're not getting the support you need? Can you complain like AODA if you're in the States in terms of accessibility needs, things like that, where sometimes you have to be the squeaky wheel to get the attention in terms of, pun not intended, but yeah, like it's basically if you can learn to use their own language and their own systems against them when they're intentionally putting barriers in your way, like cite the laws back to them, figure out what laws or what ombudsperson organizations, what other places, like, if you can go around them to a group that has higher, or like an organization that has kind of jurisdiction over them, being able to do that as much as possible. But again, too, it's like, remember that they're putting these barriers in place so that we will get tired, we will give up on advocating for ourselves. So sometimes a little spite and a little resilience goes a long way too, I will say, where, if you're going to make things difficult for me, I will make things just as difficult for you. And also having that self-assurance, that self-confidence to say, yes, I need this. Yes, I'm going to advocate for myself. And the more that you throw at me, the more I'm going to put right back at you, because I deserve to have the same chance to thrive that those with more privilege do. So being able to be your own cheerleader while also navigating the systems goes a long way as well.
Are you all fine to stay a little bit more and chat a little bit more? Because I think we have a great question here. Malicious Sheep, I saw your hand up when we were talking about that topic.
Yeah. I love what was covered within like the institutional layer, but also within like materials layer for creatives, depending on what medium is your specialty. Getting creative with what you do have and then seeking grants. I know grants aren't always accessible if you're on supports, but seeking honorariums is a way around that, especially in Canada. So if you're able to access honorariums through programs for funding for materials or technology upgrades, because one major thing, especially for digital artists, that they come across is technological cascades, especially if a lot of the your budget is already allocated for devices that require technological cascades can really impact either your quality of life or your access to community. So if you're able to access honorariums or other programs which may be in your community where there are donations of older devices, this is not just for artists, but there can be artist-specific ones, but there's also ones for older devices as donations or new devices as donations as well, for seniors, screen readers, for folks who need that. Yeah, all sorts of different types of technology. It is mostly just seeking that out, but most folks don't know that that is a potential. So I wanted to flag that as an avenue.
Thank you. Tikla.
Thank you all for this wonderful conversation. I appreciate how a number of you mentioned that access needs aren't only physical, they can also be emotional, social, psychological. So, my question is whether any of you have worked with performers who have anxiety disorders, especially around performance anxiety. And if you have that kind of experience, either with working with performers who have those issues, or if you yourself have that kind of anxiety, what sorts of accommodations have you found might be helpful to accommodate disabling performance anxiety disorders so that those performers could still get on stage and feel relatively comfortable, or get on stage and be visibly nervous, but ways that you've facilitated that process for them?
Um, Alex, do
I
you have
can.
your...
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. It's Alex speaking, and I think I keep forgetting to say that I am blind. Um, I have worked with many companies, both, well, mostly actually in the UK, but certainly I'm hoping to implement this here, where um, we have created video. We've come up with an alternative character. So I'll just be specific. In Mother Courage, we had an actor who it has exactly what you are speaking about. And we created a character for her to be a journalist reporting on what was happening to Mother Courage. So if she had that kind of anxiety on that performance day or night, then we flipped to the video version of their participation. And when they were able to participate, we adapted to the live performance. And just getting everybody on board, like right from the beginning, that is how we're working here. This is what a wonderful opportunity for all of us. And I think if you present these adaptations as creative opportunities, that's you're halfway there. Because they are, actors like to stay fresh. So that was one technique, and it worked incredibly well. So I'm just sharing that end of thought.
Thank you.
That's so helpful. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tekla. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, I was just thanking Alex for that very helpful reply.
You are welcome. It's just it's just one adaptation, but I'm sure there are many more.
Before I gave the microphone to Alex, I cut someone else, and I wonder who it was. Someone who wanted to
Oh,
reply.
it was me. It's Deshaymond. I just wanted to add that I have extreme social anxiety and performance anxiety, but I put it in my writer that I always need a quiet space. Even if it's like in the basement of the venue or something, I need at least 30 minutes before I go on stage to be very, very quiet and still, just so everything around me, calms down. Backstage can be chaotic sometimes and sometimes really loud and all of that craziness. So, how I manage and how I deal with it is I automatically request what I need. And I take my candle down there and I do my meditation and all of that stuff to get mentally prepared to go out on stage and give a good performance. So, it's definitely, I advocate. I try to always advocate for myself. I try not to be a Devo and say I need, you know, only yellow M&Ms or something like that. But I definitely require a few things to give a good show. And quiet time and quiet space where I can kind of isolate a little bit really helps to calm my social anxiety and performance anxiety.
Thank you. Marie, I saw your hands up, and I will give the word to you soon, but Rory, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thanks. I'll be brief. I love the solutions that Alex and Deshaymond already presented. I love the idea of having just an alternative backup plan for the performance, and also a quiet space, which is one of the things that our artists sometimes request of us. We always have an accessibility meeting with our artists and ask them what their needs are. And that's one of the most common requests, is just a quiet space. The other thing I wanted to say is that a comment that we get frequently from our artists, and I can't say that they necessarily have anxiety disorders, but many of our artists have just said that be performing in an atmosphere where all expressions are welcome, and where the audience's access needs are being met and prioritized, helps them to just relax into the moment and realize what the purpose of the event is, which is not to be on display as a perfect performer, but to engage with the people in the room. And that's been really magical to see in many, many contexts.
Yes. Absolutely. And the more it's very helpful to have a set where people are welcoming and and are respectful and everything. Laura, did you want to add something?
Um, yes, thank you. Speaking as somebody who's done a lot of work with people who have writers, including the Green M&Ms one, there's a reason for that. And I think that actually would be a terrific way to start thinking about our access needs as writers in our contract. The reason why performers will say things like the use of green M&Ms is because then they know that the microphones will work. They know that the speakers will be appropriate. They know that the stage will be set in the right way. So if they've followed and paid attention to the terms of the writer, they're safe. That's, I think, what all of us are looking for. And I've really experienced great things when people have been made to feel more welcome. The quiet space also works really well for people with a variety of neurodivergencies. So it's valuable across the board. End thought.
Mary, I will take your question. I'm conscious of the time, and I don't want to spend hours and hours, but I love this conversation. I would love to stay more, but yeah. Mary, go ahead.
Mary, do you mean me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Mary Kelly. I'm perhaps coming at this from a different perspective. I just discovered the ArtsAbly group yesterday through LinkedIn, where I'm very active. I think I'm probably older than most of you. I'm 73. I did have a very active career in the performing arts, visual arts, etc. Mostly behind the scene. I was a co-producer for a theater company in Montreal. I also had my own communications company. I did a lot of that at the Sadie Bronfman Center and any number of other, and as well as in Toronto at the Royal Alex Theatre a number of years ago. It's Center Stage Magazine. So I'm very grateful to be here and learn about all of you, your experiences, and those of you that have formed companies and groups, etc. Love to connect with you through social media. I've been housebound, disabled, often bedridden for the past 26 years. So, like I believe one of the other persons this evening spoke to the issue that they're mostly have to deal with things virtually. I'm very grateful for social media. I'm very active in terms of social determinants of health, disability rights, just across the spectrum. Most of the things that I post about through LinkedIn, Facebook, X, Twitter, Blue Sky. I'm not really active on Instagram, but I follow other people there. All have to do with trying to make our world a much better place for us all. It's sort of been a lifelong passion of mine, a driving force, and certainly in terms of the arts. So I just want to thank you all so much for what you're doing, and you can find me on any of those platforms either under my name, Mary C. Kelly, and my handle is @AstuteCitizen, or under my former company name. It's not active, but Lay Communication, Mary Kelly Communication Services. I'd love to keep, particularly those of you, well, in every realm, where I can help to promote informally because I am often bedridden, so my reality is very constrained. But if I know about you, including ArtsAbly, I shared that on LinkedIn, then I'd love to do that. And just thank you so much for letting me be here. I'm not going to be an active participant in the way that the rest of you are, but I've been doing my thing championing this in disability rights, and including even earlier today, for at least the past 26 years, if not much longer than that. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And before giving the word to Elizabeth, maybe Malicious Sheep, do you want to? Um, I know that some problematics are also yours, but you just showed that, so many things were possible with a community. And I wanted to give briefly the word back to you, Malicious Sheep. What are your so when you were searching for the community to come to you, what were your strategies? How did you start that, and where did you dig into that?
Mm, I appreciate this question a lot. So while a little bit of a backstory, for 10 years I was completely immobilized due to a series of cascading health issues, and slowly reemerged after a decade. And just prior to COVID lockdowns, I started to reemerge and started to look for community. I had been looking for community previously, but I found a lot of it to be inaccessible or ableist or otherwise prejudicial. So it was really difficult to really find myself there. And then any physical locations that I was able to access at the time, I wasn't able to access. A lot of the spaces around me regionally are historical buildings, so not up to code. And they did not have the budgets to upgrade. So I moved digitally, thankfully, with one of the benefits of lockdown was that everybody learned how to use Zoom, and that's how I started to integrate after 10 years. And I spent some time exploring um, uh, accessible events. So there was an event for Pride, which was an accessible Pride event that was done virtually, which I attended, as well as a accessible curation, which both were done through Zoom. Those were fabulous. And then I came across a community called Creative Connector. I recommend that for anybody. That is how I found ArtsAbly. It's a community network that is powered by disabled community members. It is all across Canada, but they are expanding. They are wonderful. You can make yourself a little profile. And I've had a couple opportunities through that, which has been great. But then um, accessing the blockchain community, which I mentioned earlier, Tezos, I came across it through a music community. The musician at the time was exploring it, and I ended up being in there, and now I'm like a leader in that, that community. So it's been very fun, and it really is like the first time that I've actually felt like community support. I was always like in my previous experiences, like I even served before I got really sick. I served as a curator in Toronto for a year, but even in the spaces that I could access before my health um, devolved rather, I was treated like an imposition and not as a person. And that only got worse with time until I had digital access. And because I have been locked down and will be for the rest of my life, I have um, one of the rarest immunodeficiencies on record. It's me and one other person who has since passed. So my entire social existence is digital. And so because of that, and that in access that I've faced elsewhere, I aim to build spaces in which that doesn't occur. So removing lateral structures, um, or removing hierarchical structures rather, and moving to lateral structures for organization and decentralized, community driven mutual aid groups and grassroots supports and education. So that's definitely a priority for me because I have seen it work and have felt the impact of institutions who their aim is to preserve. They do not want to move forward actively. They need to be shown that it can be done easily, cheaply, and that they will not be punished for past transgressions in order to actually adopt things often. So I'm trying my best to provide a space in which I can provide that evidence in a new way with folks who are, I consider my family within the ecosystem. We're all a wonderful, happy global family of artists and developers. And so we want to support one another and removing barriers in a way that an institution doesn't want to. So I hope that covers it. I think it does.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Jessica, I saw your hands. I will come back to you. But before, Elizabeth, do you want to add something?
Oh, only that I just wanted to affirm that, and I'm not going to do as good a job with this as Melissa Sheep just did. That's wonderful how you put it. But for Mary, like online organizing is organizing. Online community is community. The work that you're doing is incredibly important. Amplifying other people's voices is very important. What both of you were saying brought to mind someone else's work, Dom Evans, who is a filmmaker and directed an award-winning music video for James Ian, another Ramped member, a couple years ago. And Dom directed the entire thing from bed in Michigan, and it was filmed across the country. Dom does amazing, amazing work and is one of those examples of once you let go of the old rules and you really prioritize access, some cool creative things can happen. So I just wanted to make sure I lifted up Dom's work. But thank you both.
Thank you. Jessica, do you want to ask your question?
Hi. Yeah. I wanted to ask, I just have to get my words. Um, how do we find, I know there's a lot of people here from like music academia. How do you find that academia is changing music education? And I kind of wanted to specifically ask as well, like, are people taking a more multidisciplinary approach to music education in like the academia spheres?
Who wants to take that? Maybe
I'm
Anton.
wondering, I'm waiting for Andrew to take it.
Yes. Andrew, are you still here?
It's
You
not
can say
nice.
hold on. Yes,
I'm
sort of.
so sorry, Andrew.
No,
I
no,
could
no,
have
no, no,
just
no, no, no,
I could have
no,
just
no, no,
vamped
no.
for a minute and let
No,
you
exactly. You're the best vampire. I'm sorry, the best vamper. So what I'll say is maybe kind of. I think it depends on what you mean by music education. My sense is that the field music education, qua music education, K through 12 education, is still working on very special education kinds of frameworks for the most part. I know there are people out there, but because that's not my playground, I don't know you to who. I mean, there's Elizabeth right there. You know, she's drinking right now, but I mean, there are a handful
It
of
is
people.
tea, okay? The way you
Fine.
said that.
Fine.
Some
It
people are
shouldn't be
not
tea,
going to
not this
see the
time of
tea
year.
mug.
No. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. No, it's tricky because structurally academia is still impossible because it's so conservative. And again, Melissa Sheep put it, as Elizabeth said, better than any I can ever put it. So the structure of the academia is still a really dangerous place for anybody. It is possible to find mentors who will make things less troubling, and there are people who make it through these networks of mentorship and get breaks sometimes, and some people don't get breaks. I mean, again, Elizabeth was saying earlier, we have a number of really extraordinary scholars in higher education music who have been left out, who have been purposefully boxed out specifically because of the ableism in the structure. And we have a few rising scholars who are kicking ass in an intersectional way and ain't going to be stopped by it because they found the right kinds of trajectories. So what I would say is it better than 10 years ago? Absolutely. Is it straightforward? No. But I know I am always ready to talk to people about what the least worst paths might be, and I know Elizabeth is, with the reality that it's a gamble because academia is a terrible place. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but
Well, I
it
think
kind
there's
of is.
something you told me years ago, which is that like you've got to be really clear that you're not letting any of this define your self-worth and how you understand yourself as a person because it's already built to tear you down.
Yep.
And that idea of being more flexible and multidisciplinary is key. I mean, if there's one thing people with disabilities can do better than anyone else, it's creative problem solving and pivoting and adapting. And that's what you have to do to succeed in these careers too. I mean, I have no idea why I have a research project with Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I am a nerd, but I didn't even play D&D that long ago. It's if you're pivoting, there are great people out there, but it is tricky, and that idea of being flexible, multidisciplinary is very important.
But this is Andrew again. I'll jump in very briefly to say there are more people, and it's worth finding them, worth finding the networks, and some of them are within systems that are themselves problematic, but that doesn't mean that we need to give up on the system. I'm a systems kind of guy. So I mean, opposite to, or maybe not opposite to, but complementary to Malicious Sheep, whose work I find just stunningly awesome, and I'm going to have to track down everything that you're doing. I am where I am, but gotten to where I am, and so it's similar to Elizabeth's whole point about you open the gates from the inside, but getting people inside the gates, and then there's boss battle, right? So the boss battles are still there. But we need people to help us with the boss battles, and some of us are really eager to build those communities. So yeah, I mean, it's great to have everybody here. I've been so awed by everyone here. Frankly, it's such a badass team here. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
I'm sorry. I know you all want to react, but I will have to wrap up because it's been almost 2 hours, and I guess we need the 2 hours. For the next live episode 100, right? We will have a live. So I will give a little conclusive words, and then I just wanted to thank everyone for being here today. For those of in attendance, thank you for staying and being there, chatting and conversing. And oh, I wish we had that more frequently, and it makes me think now. So as a brief conclusive chat, support your communities of artists and art professionals with disabilities around you, right? We need to have more access to performing in educational spaces and have these conversations. As you heard tonight, we need advocates and supporters. So, listen, go and check the work. We will publish this resource page on ArtsAbly's website. We will connect with these people. I will publish the profile for all the people who participated tonight. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this conversation today. It will be published as a special episode number 50, as an usual podcast episode, and also the YouTube video. And yeah, thank you all, everybody. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day or night. And yeah, talk soon, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Thank
Diane.
you,
much, Diane.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Much.
Thanks,
I'm just
Bye,
so
everyone.
awed by all
everyone.
you do.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. It's been a joy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Peace and
Thank
love.
you, Diane.